Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. We're just gathering here. Oh, and I see Tate. I will turn it over to him.
Can you all hear me?
Sure. Loud and clear. Yeah.
Make sure I can hear you all.
Webinar. Good morning from James Webb about a huge.
I'm about to.
We'll just wait another minute, Tate, as people log in, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Okay, Tate, so we respect people's time. Do you want to get us going?
Yes. Well, hello, everyone. So good to see you. Good to have you here with us on today. This is a webinar hosted by the California Reinvestment Coalition on the Resilience Fund. My name is Tate Hill. I'm the Executive Director at Access Plus Capital. We're a CDFI based in Fresno, California that serves Central California. And I'm glad to be joined by a number of distinguished guests that are going to share about this new exciting program hosted by the California Reinvestment Coalition. Go to the next slide. Yes. So just a few housekeeping rules, just so we can have a great experience. And I know you all are excited about learning about this new program. Just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded. So just in case you weren't able to forward it to someone or they needed it, they will be able to have access to it. But also just to remind you that just to be mindful of your background and also your mics. When you introduce yourself, if you can share your name, your organization, your location, this is also a great opportunity just for us to know who's in the room and to connect with one another. And then also we know that there will probably be a number of questions that you will have. Definitely utilize the Zoom Q&A feature to ask those questions. And also we are conscious that people have other language needs other than English. And so we do have Spanish interpretation services that are available for this webinar. And I believe we have someone that is going to provide that instruction in Spanish
Yes.
that will let you know how to connect.
Yes, Tate, so that I can do that. So, si necesitan traducción, pueden empujar el botón que está abajo, que se ve como un globo del mundo, y pueden escoger español. Tenemos a alguien que está traduciendo en español. Escriben, si escogen que traducción, si necesitan traducción, por favor, escriban un mensaje en el chat para saber que están ahí, ¿ok? Y muchas gracias.
Thank you. So just as far as our agenda for today, we're going to again create opportunity just for some introductions. You'll hear more about why this fund has been created. And then we're going to give you an opportunity just to learn more how you can have a strong application. And then also just share about the process and create a space for you to ask some questions, and hopefully we'll be able to provide answers on today. So with that, we're going to have introductions. And again, we have some great guests that are going to be speaking. It's a pleasure to know these individuals. Mr. Clarence Williams, who is the board chair for the California Capitol, and he's also a founding advisory committee member for the Resilience Fund. We also have Paulina Gonzalez Brito, and she is, they are the executive director of CRC, California Reinvestment Coalition. And then also John Huffman, who is the chief development officer at CRC. Along with myself, Tate Hill, and I'm the executive director at Access Plus Capital, and also glad to be an advisory committee member for the Resilience Fund. Okay. And we also want to thank our many partners who are supporting this project. And as you see there, as we know, this work, you can't do it by yourself. And we want to thank the many partners that are funding partners that are supporting this project.
Clarence, you want to take it from here?
Sure. And with that slide of the funders, I just want to emphasize that without these funders, this would not be possible. And I don't want to just necessarily slip over that fact. As all of us realize, funding is critical to the mission and the work that we do. I've been asked to speak to why is it important, it being the Resilience Fund. And the reason why I've been asked, Resilience Fund is important. Briefly, I'm aware that this audience understands and recognizes the disparate inequality in assets and wealth among people and within communities of color. In addition to the need for capital and capacity building resources, CRC and its Resilience Fund is facing head on the realities of a changing demographic composition, which will require greater leadership and numbers of organizations led by people of color. This objective is not only a civil rights issue, but it is also a vital need for the sustainability of our local, state, and national economic viability. Again, I want to thank you for participating in this. This leadership that we are hoping to provide is a first step in a movement that I think will grow more and more important as time goes on. And so again, thank you for your participation.
Next slide. Thank you, Clarence, and thank you for your hard work in helping us get here. And Tate, thank you as well. Without the both of you, we would not have been able to make this a reality. And so thank you all for joining us this morning. I know you're all very busy. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. So a bit about how we got here and why CRC has decided to step into this moment. So, you know, as we were beginning the pandemic last year and all of us were, you know, watching what was happening to small businesses and as our members across the state who are really financial first responders were in the field trying to keep small businesses from closing and working on PPP loans. And we saw the economic hardship that was happening and the disproportionate economic hardship along with the disproportionate health hardships that were happening in BIPOC communities and to Black, Indigenous people of color. And we saw the murder of George Floyd at the hands of the CRC staff and board made a decision and a commitment that we needed to step into this moment. As a nation was being asked, and there were actually demands that we reckon with our history and legacy in this country of racism. And we decided that we needed to be able to do more, that we needed to ask others to do more, and that we wanted to be able to really do something that would change the landscape that we were operating under, that time and time again left crises after crises hitting our communities hardest. And so we decided to start the Resilience Fund, and we put our own money into the Resilience Fund, as well as some side prey money that we had been given to us for a total of $1 million to start the Resilience Fund. And then we asked our financial partners to join us. So far, we've raised $4.2 million, and we hope to raise more to get up to $5 million. With this money, what we would like to do and what we're going to do and why you're all here today is to support emerging CDFIs, those organizations that are BIPOC-led and serving BIPOC communities who would like to become CDFIs. Perhaps you're lenders already, perhaps you're working in communities as CDCs and you want to become CDFIs, or perhaps you're a brand new CDFI and need to build your capacity. We know that it's BIPOC CDFIs, BIPOC organizations who've often been shut off from this kind of capital and capacity building. So thank you again, and we'll now next go to the next slide to be able to talk a little bit more in detail about what we're doing. So the Resilience Fund is a 2-year, $4 million initiative to reimagine systems of capital. We want to center this work on communities of color, knowing that not only have we been excluded, but our communities have often had wealth extracted from them. We have an advisory committee of community leaders, and the cohort will receive capacity building, technical assistance, and grant funding to achieve certification as CDFIs and to grow the capacity of startup CDFIs. We want to invest in a new generation of BIPOC CDFIs that are directly investing in communities hit hardest by the pandemic and build a pathway to economic resilience. Next slide, please. Here you see a list of our advisory committee members. They are a diverse group from all over the state, and they have a wide range of experiences. Some of them are CDFIs themselves. You see Tate is here, and you see some some people like Carolina Martinez, who are with Cameo, who do a lot of work in terms of capacity building for CDFIs and have a CDFI incubator. You have others who are evaluation experts and work in universities, and others who are on the ground, doing the work every day in communities and who are very close to what the needs are. And so this advisory committee will be helping us along the way to select the grantees, to develop and implement the program that we've been working on. And we are very thankful for their volunteer effort and look forward to working with them. So we want to thank the advisory committee. Some of you may know them, and please thank them if you have a chance for their volunteer work on this. Next slide. So a little bit about what makes a strong proposal. John Hoffman will go through the proposal with you, or the application process with you in a bit. But we just wanted to highlight for you what really makes a strong proposal as you put it together for your application. So we want you to show that you're a BIPOC-led organization, Black, Indigenous, person of color-led, that you have a commitment to internal and external equity throughout the organization. So what does that mean? That means that you have a commitment to equity in terms of the way that you do your work externally in the community, but that you've also done work internally or are doing work internally on an equity within your own organization. So if there's any questions about that, we can answer them in the Q&A. And then we want to see that the leadership among the staff and the board is also diverse, right? That there's a commitment to diversity within up and down the organization, and that that often doesn't happen overnight, and that shows us that an organization has been building and has a commitment to diversity over time. We want to see a commitment from the board and the leadership, from the executive director to the cohort learning. This is not just a grant program where you receive a grant, but we have a full program of cohort learnings that will help organizations get from where you are now to a CDFI certification and a state licensing as well. So this is really a full program and a full commitment for the organization to participate in. So we want to see that come through strongly, loud and clear in your application, and ensure that as you go through this process that you've had these conversations internally in your organization, and that there's an understanding that, that there's a commitment beyond the grant dollars. Next slide, please. So some application FYIs, and you'll hear more about this from John. The grants are $200,000 to $250,000 over 2 years. The cohort will be about 10 to 12 organizations statewide, and we are really looking for some diversity in terms of geography. So please, keep that in mind. Often we see, for instance, rural parts of the state ignored, or some parts of really urban areas that are, ignored or not being, don't have their own CDFIs that are serving BIPOC-led, serving BIPOC communities in urban areas. So the other is the deadline. So keep in mind, you'll hear this again and again, October 1st and 11:59 p.m. We hope you're not working till 11:59 p.m. on October 1st, but that's the deadline. You need to be a 501c3 to be eligible to apply. So keep that in mind. And here's the website. If you haven't been to the website, just go to calreeinvest.org, go to the tab under resources, and you'll see the Resilience Fund there, as well as some information, FAQs, and the application. Next slide. So a bit about the TA offerings to the cohort. We are partnering with a couple of really outstanding organizations who will be providing the cohort offerings. So Cameo, which has an excellent training and incubator for CDFIs, will be providing their CDFI Essentials training, which includes, and this is just an example of the type of topics they cover in that training: loan manual overview, portfolio performance standards, loan product design, underwriting, risk rating systems, and loan loss reserves are part of what they offer in their training. So we're very thankful for Cameo and partnering with us. The other is, you saw in the slide, I think it was like the third slide, the partners, the funders who are working with us, many bank partners who have contributed to this fund, who have stepped up in this moment to provide these grant dollars for this fund. We want to, and many of them have asked, what else can we do? What else can we do to help in this program? And we've talked with many of them about building relationships with the cohort. We know, and we've heard time and time again, that often these very small CDFIs have a hard time building relationships with bank partners, and maybe they're institutionally disconnected from financial institutions, or often banks sometimes are a little skittish about investing in smaller CDFIs. So this relationship with bank partners is going to be a really important part of this cohort. We're going to be partnering with CETA on a few pieces that are really important to getting to CDFI certification. So loan program development, helping organizations set up micro and small business lending and credit policies, state licensing, preparing the application for your application for state licensing. Lending, consultants will underwrite and close loans and begin to build a loan portfolio. This is really important because as you go to certification with the Treasury, it's really important to show that you have a lending portfolio, a successful lending portfolio. And they will work with a partner in Chicago, Fund Consulting, to prepare that CDFI certification application. And then for those of you who are already CDFIs, perhaps you're new in the last couple of years and you're wanting to build your capacity, CECITA will be working with organizations that are already CDFI certified to build and grow your plan and develop your readiness and engagement to build your capacity. Next slide, please. And just a reminder, I think it's being set up, I'm sorry, it's being reminded in the chat, but please, any questions you might have, please type them into the Q&A and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to John, who will walk us through the application process in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. I'm going to walk you through some the application and provide some tips along the way. And just a reminder that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function so that we can address those during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Next slide. You know, this first tip is more of a warning, I would say, than a tip. We're using a system called Every Action. It's an online form. What's important to know about this form is that you cannot save an application in progress and return to it the way you can with many grant makers online platforms. So what we would suggest you do is to copy the questions, save your answers elsewhere, and then paste them in all at once and submit it. You will see on that page toward the top a Remember Me checkbox. What's important to know about that is that stores your contact information, but it will not save the application. So I can't say it enough. Please do not, you know, if you're going to put the application together, submit it all at once. Next slide. So at the top of the application, you'll see some basic contact information. You can go to the next slide. And information about your organization. This is all pretty standard. And the next slide. And then you'll see some qualifying questions, asking whether you're a 501c3, whether your organization is based in California and serves California, whether you primarily support BIPOC-owned small businesses or affordable housing, and whether you plan to become a CDFI or are a newly certified CDFI. Next slide. And what's important about those qualifying questions is that if you do answer no to any of those, you should stop there. Your organization will not meet the basic eligibility requirements. The form will allow you to continue. However, we recommend that you not apply at this point. Next slide. Then there are a number of questions. We tried to limit the number of questions to talk about your work, about your plans to develop and build out your CDFI. And these text boxes have a 3,000 character limit. However, we don't expect you to use all 3,000 characters. We wanted, as a development person myself, we wanted to make it generous enough that you didn't have to go in and edit and change a lot of big words to small words to fit into tiny character limitations. So we gave you enough space, but don't feel obligated to use all that space. Next slide. And then there are a number of questions dealing with the leadership identity of your executive director, your board, and your leadership team. And as Paulina mentioned, you know, organizations with leadership and staff who reflect the communities they serve and that have the lived experiences from BIPOC communities are highly encouraged to apply for this program. We've listed some demographic identities. There's a narrative, but what's important to know here is at the very end, there's a narrative section. And we encourage you to use that space to tell us more about the ways in which members of your organization, leadership, and staff self-identify and reflect the communities served. And I think there's another next slide. I'm going to just once again touch upon the timeline. The deadline is Friday, October 1st at 12:59. In late October, we will conduct interviews and ask for some additional documentation from finalists. By mid-November, we're expecting to have the final cohort announced, and shortly thereafter, grants will be made. And our goal is to have our first cohort kickoff convening in early December. Next slide. And, you know, as Paulina said, a final tip, I would not recommend waiting until 11:59 p.m. on Friday to submit your proposal. One, we don't want you up that late. And secondly, if you do have any questions along the way, feel free to email us at crc@calreinvest.org, and we will try to get back to you as quickly as possible with an answer. So yeah, I would recommend doing it a little bit early before then. And next slide. And finally, before we get into the Q&A, Paulina, I did want to just personally acknowledge the sponsors and funders for this program. I'm the one who worked with many of them. I appreciate their financial support and their support for making this organization fund happen. This is an unusual thing that a lot of corporations, banks in this case, get together and pull their funds. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank the San Francisco Foundation, Capital One, Cathay Bank, Chase, CIT Bank, City National Bank, First Republic Bank, Flagstar Bank, Mechanics Bank, Pacific Premier Bank, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Tri-Counties Bank, the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, and US Bank. And so you can see it's a fairly large collaboration, and we could not have done this without those folks.
Thank you, John. Before we get to Q&A, I just want to mention that we have scheduled this webinar on a very important Jewish holiday, which is Yom Kippur. So we want to acknowledge that, and also apologize to our Jewish friends and members for that, and say that we will make this recording available publicly so that anybody who wasn't able to make it can see the recording. And for anybody who was not able to make it due to the holiday of Yom Kippur, we will make ourselves available to answer any questions and answers. So please email us, and we will make sure to do that. So thank you. And now we will do questions and answers. We will get to questions and answers.
And I think Patty is going to help field some questions.
Yes.
Okay. First question, could a newly created CDFI apply, just start lending?
So a newly created CDFI can apply. This was something that we thought very carefully about. We know that there are BIPOC-led CDFIs that are maybe less than 2 years old and that really need capacity building support. And yes, so we will be selecting a portion of the cohort who are very new startup CDFIs, and through the cohort work, we will be working with you to build your capacity.
Awesome. Next question, are fiscally sponsored projects or orgs with 501c3 applications in progress eligible to apply?
That's a great question. So it would be better if you already had your 501c3 status, but if you have an application in, that should be fine. If you are fiscally sponsored, we can potentially help you with your application for a 501c3. So please just note that in your responses, the open-ended responses, and we will, see what we can do as we look through the applications.
Is your nonprofit, if your nonprofit is not a CDFI, can we still apply?
Yes, absolutely. So this program is about helping organizations that want to, BIPOC-led organizations that want to become CDFIs. So we highly encourage any organization that wants to become a CDFI to apply. That is the primary purpose of this program, and the grant funding, as well as the cohort training and program that we put together. So yes, please apply and please spread the word.
If an application has received direct funding from any of the bank partners listed, would that disqualify them?
No, that is not a disqualifying criteria for this project. So please do apply. And as we've mentioned, the grant funding is just a piece of this. And the other piece of this is the capacity building, the cohort learnings. And so it really is a package that we've put together, and our bank partners know that it's really a comprehensive program that the cohort members will be taking part in.
Are Asians considered BIPOC for the purposes of this fund?
Absolutely, and I hope not just for this fund, but for beyond, right? So Black, Indigenous, people of color, our Asian brothers and sisters are absolutely people of color, and we know that they disproportionately have been also hit by the pandemic, as well as violent hate crimes. So we want to acknowledge that, and so please absolutely apply to the program.
Thank you. Is a newly certified CDFI not newly created can apply?
I'm not sure I understand that question. So a newly certified CDFI, but not newly created. So it's that maybe you were a lender in the past, and but you just got your CDFI certification. Maybe that's what I'm understanding from the question. Yes, if you've newly become a CDFI in the last 2 years, so you just got your certification in the last 2 years, you can apply.
Awesome. Is a venture fund eligible or just loan funds?
As long as you're a 501c3 serving BIPOC communities and BIPOC-led and meet some of the other criteria we talked about, so the most important thing is that you're a 501c3. I saw a chat pop up with a question, Patty, about do you have to have lending experience?
Right. I was gonna jump to the chat questions after we finish the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem. Is a CDFI similar to a mortgage broker?
So a CDFI, and maybe Clarence, if you're still there, you can give us some more detailed answers here. Are you there to tell us about the difference here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm going back, obviously, in some time in terms of the various criteria, but my understanding, there were two things that was, I think, most important. One, mission, maybe three. Two, the communities that you serve in terms of low mod income or communities of color were very important, and that you are not necessarily government controlled. Now that's going back in time in terms of just three. There were about 6 or so when we did it, and so that's being a mortgage. I don't know. It depends upon how the rationale in terms of the financing and that you're going to do, the target mission and community that you're going to serve. I think that is what's going to be most important, and that's a type of question that I think that our TA providers can help with in terms of working with the CDFI National CDFI Fund.
And I saw a response in the chat that mortgage brokers cannot make loans unless they have been registered with the state. So CDFIs are lenders. And I think, Clarence, what you just said is really important for the question around venture capital as well, in terms of mission, who you're serving, so just to keep that in mind.
Thank you both. We just, next question. We just received our CDFI certification, congratulations, on January 23rd of this year. And I'm guessing we're still qualified to apply, correct?
Absolutely, and yes, congratulations. You are a very brand new CDFI, and we're really happy to hear that. And yes, you do qualify as a startup brand new CDFI.
And can two organizations apply jointly?
So in this case, no, we're asking for, and John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're asking for individual applications from each organization.
That's correct. And if you have a partner who's going to provide support for the organization or do work with you, you can describe that in the question that asks about the project itself.
Thank you, John. Would this funding be limited to a specific geography, offer funding only in California, or can it be open to demographic, AAPI women, etc.?
So it is focused and limited to California, but as long as you are working within the state, that is the primary limitation for geography. If you are a organization that serves a specific demographic within the BIPOC community, so in this case, I think I heard Asian American women, I think that is really, excellent and absolutely does not disqualify you. Often our organizations work with a specific demographic so that they can better serve that demographic. Yes, that is not a disqualifying criteria, and we encourage you to apply.
Thank you. Can a CDFI certified in 2018, but not yet launching lending, apply?
That is a very good question. John, I think we have a 2-year limit there, but I wonder about this, and maybe we should take this offline.
Yeah, I would say in that case, I would encourage the organization to apply. That is an interesting thing, and maybe explain what some of the barriers have been to launching the fund within that period. But we do request that if you are a CDFI that has a loan fund that's already making loans, that it be that you be certified within the past 2 years.
Thank you, John.
Right. Thank you. Would a multi-service nonprofit, health clinic, etc., on top of the community development, need to create a separate entity to become certified as a CDFI?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would apply, and then our TA providers can help you with that. So you can also send us an email if you'd like. At the email, I think it was crc@calreinvest.org, and we can follow up with our TA providers if this seems like something that might be an obstacle for you to apply. And you might not want to spend the time applying if it's going to require this extra step. We can follow up with you and ask our TA providers, and then you can make a decision.
Paulina, the area of concern here is there's a criteria from the National CDFI Fund that certain percentage of your assets are devoted to the CDFI. However, I think your recommendation to talk to some of the consultants, because it may require some change in your organizational structure in order to have the CDFI, but it may be separate. So yes, do check with the TA folks.
Thank you, Clarence.
You may be eligible here, but not necessarily for the feds.
And one of the things that our TA providers will be working with you on is governance structure within your organization in order to be ready to become a CDFI. So all of that is part of the TA that you will be receiving in terms of what Clarence just mentioned.
Mhm.
I'm going to jump to a chat question. Can an organization that is not a 501c3 or is fiscally sponsored apply for funding?
So this is, I know this is a really important question for a lot of organizations. So I'm going to say that I would encourage you to apply if you are an organization that is a not-for-profit, working with a not-for-profit fiscally sponsored, working to become a 501c3. So that way, perhaps if we look at your application and it's strong and it's something that we can help you do in terms of applying to become a 501c3 with the IRS, that's something that we can do as, with our TA providers. But it is an extra step. And so, our TA providers, we thought this question was going to come up, so I asked one of our TA providers, and he actually has to look into whether, that application has to be completed before the CDFI certification. So there's some work we have to do on our end, but it should not discourage you, and we can do some work with you on that application as well.
Great, thank you. Do you have to be a CDFI in order to apply?
No, you do not have to be a CDFI in order to apply, and that is why we are here to help you become a CDFI.
And Paulina, can I also add, I think there may have been some confusion earlier. You also do not need to have a California lender's license to apply.
Thank you, John.
Are the grants restricted? And if so, how?
John, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, no, these are general operating grants. They're coming from a donor advised fund at the San Francisco Foundation. They do the due diligence to ensure that your organization is a 501c in good standing with the IRS. And they will make the grant payments, which will be divided over 2 years. However, we will have an MOU or something similar that we would sign with your organization, primarily outlining the commitment to the project itself, to participating in the peer learning and convenings. The grant itself, however, is a general operating grant, and we want organizations to decide how best to use that money themselves.
Thank you, John. Is this a grant funding or a loan to the community? Can we get a copy of the guidelines on the required criteria to fund a particular community?
So the FAQs are on the website. We encourage you to look at them. And sorry, Patty, I missed the first part of the question.
Is this considered is this grant funding or a loan to the community?
Oh, yeah, this is grant funding. This is something that we are really excited about. We are really appreciative of our funding partners that John was able to read off earlier, our bank funding partners who made this grant funding. And so we know that that's really important always, and especially at this time and as organizations want to make this transition. So yes, absolutely, it's grant funding.
How will the funding be distributed? Will there be an upfront portion given or a breakdown month by month?
John, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, it would be in 2 installments. Roughly 50%, so if it's a $200,000 grant, roughly $100,000 at the first, and then a year later, another $100,000. Yeah.
Thank you.
Should a nonprofit create a DBA for the for the new CDFI certification?
Clarence, do you know whether that's something that's required?
I don't think that we had to do that. No.
Yeah.
It could be, but
we,
it was in the minutia of the application, so I don't recall. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to follow up with you on that. I don't. So here's what I would say. So, you know, if you apply for this grant, you would apply as your organization. And then if something like that is required, it's something that our TA provider would help you with, right? So, so I wouldn't worry about that right now. So, you know, that would be something that would come along with the TA assistance that you'll be getting.
Mm-hmm.
If my organization is selected, will your assistance include how to proceed with the previously submitted CDFI application and approval process limbo?
Yes, so we hear this a lot from organizations that, you know, that maybe they have an application in there and it's just kind of stuck, or maybe they've been denied a couple of times, right? And so that is something that our TA providers can help with. And they might be able to even give you some analysis as to, you know, why you've been denied in the past and how to help you, you know, get through that. And yes, also in terms of applications that might just be stuck in the process.
Do we have to have any experience at all with lending or micro lending?
You do not actually have to have experience with lending or micro lending. We know that organizations are going to be in different places. We might have some organizations that have no experience whatsoever with lending or micro lending, who are, you know, CBOs working hard in their communities and see the need and just want to do this. There are others who've been doing some lending and, need and want to take the next step. And then there's some who are brand new CDFI. So we're going to have potentially a cohort with organizations at different places in the process, and that is okay. So yes, you do not have to have experience in lending.
Great. Is there an opportunity to upload a market assessment document regarding CDFI gaps in our service area? It may help make our proposal stronger as there is a need and for specific services. Sorry.
John, you want to?
So the answer is no. That's another thing about our proposal. There's no way to send attachments. I would suggest referencing that study in the in your description of the project or the problem that you're trying to solve. If there's a way to put it online and point to it, that's fine. But I wouldn't. I don't think that that's necessary for the initial round. But I would definitely mention that you have that study available, and that's the kind of thing we would love to see when we get to the round with finalists.
Great, thank you. Are faith-based organizations eligible or even encouraged to apply?
You are absolutely eligible, and I would say that everybody is encouraged if you meet the qualifications.
What about an organization working on being reinstated that has a fiscal sponsor?
I can somebody maybe in the chat say reinstated in what way, or John, maybe you know.
And my initial answer is yes. If you had a 501c3 and then you dissolved it and became and then had a fiscal sponsor for a while, now you're I assume that's what you mean, reinstating your 501c3 status, and you're in, especially if you're in that process, I would encourage you to apply. Yeah.
Okay, that seems right from Gloria. Thanks, Gloria.
Great, thank you. How many grantees will be selected?
So we will have a cohort of 10 to 12 grantees.
Will there be another round of funding beyond this year?
We hope so, but we don't know. It's all going to depend on, well, first of all, I want to make sure everybody understands it's a 2-year grant, and so it's a 2-year cohort. But we, our bank partners might be on as a participants, and so we hope they're listening and hearing to how excited people are and how many people are interested in this, because you know, there's always a possibility that if this goes well, that we can, and we know it will, because there's so much excitement and our TA partners are amazing, that we can raise more money and do this again.
Would the successful cohort, once they have become CDFI certified, have predetermined criteria about how to manage their lending?
I think what's going to happen is that you will, and Clarence, maybe you have some advice here, is that you will have your credit policy set up together with the TA provider, and your lending portfolio set up, and so that it's you have some strong assets and some strong policies, so that your lending is you know, putting out some quality lending. And I think that is one of the most important pieces of the TA that we're going to be providing. And so, Clarence, I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Well, I think you're right, Paulina. And from my reading of the TA providers' services to be provided, I do recall there being underwriting criteria.
Oh, right, yes.
As a part of the curriculum and other services. So I don't think you have to worry about that.
Thank you, Clarence.
Do you need any lending experience, and/or are there specific fields of work required by the nonprofit?
So you do not need lending experience. And one thing I want to add to what I said earlier is that you don't have to have loan officers. You don't have to, right? So again, people will be in different places. Sorry, Patty, I lost the thread on the last part of the question.
Are there any specific field of work required?
The only thing that we ask, and you know, we know there's a lot of folks working with small businesses, some working with affordable housing, is that you work in communities of color, meeting the, you know, the needs of those communities in terms of, you know, their economic and needs, right? So I don't know, John, if it's more specific than that.
I would say that this program is focused on, but not limited to, small business lending, micro enterprise lending, on affordable housing production and preservation.
Thanks, John.
Can our organization apply to fund our own new project? Is it required that we provide services to third-party organizations as a CDFI?
I'm not sure I understand the question. John, do you?
I'm not sure I understand it. Can you read it again, Patty?
Can our organization apply to fund our own new project? And is it required that we provide services to third-party organizations as a CDFI?
Well, it is required that as a CDFI, you are lending, right? So you're lending in your community. That's part of the requirement. I'm not sure what it means in terms of your own new project. We are looking to fund organizations that are either new CDFIs or looking to become CDFIs. But again, as John said, the grant is general operating, but we hope that that's, you know, that the organization is using that and looking to grow their capacity as a new CDFI.
Awesome. And could we download the application questions?
John?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know if Adrian, do you know, or Brian, do you know the answer to that question by any chance? We can certainly make a PDF available on the website for download if it's, yeah.
I think that would be our best option. I'm sure. Yeah. The easiest way is, I'm sure you could highlight and save from from the application, but I think that we should PDF it and just have it on that landing page that's in the chat, which is the Resilience Fund link.
Yeah,
Okay,
great
so-
question. Thank you.
Yeah, and it might take us a couple days, but we'll make that available. Thank you.
And a question that came up a couple of times in chat, and I jumped over it. Just more clarity on what or how you define BIPOC.
So the way that we define BIPOC, and it's in a strategic plan, is Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so Indigenous, the way that we define Indigenous is Indigenous to the Americas, right? So maybe in terms of, we know that there's been a need and a push to migrate due to American foreign policy and economic policy. So that's how we define Indigenous, and including Indigenous on US soil, but Americas generally. And then people of color are, self-identified people of color, right? Asian American, South Asian, more specifically, right? Filipino, and I'm sure I'm missing others. And so I just want to, acknowledge that Asian Pacific Islander. And when I say Americas, I want to also include, I'll stop there. Yeah.
And last question so far.
Patty, can I add something?
Oh,
Just one
sorry.
thing
Go
to
ahead.
that. I would also encourage you there at the very bottom of the application, there is a question around BIPOC leadership. And we're really looking at how does your organization, not only do the folks who work in your organization reflect the communities they serve, but how are you looking at power structures? How are you looking at addressing white supremacy, white supremacist power structure? Anything along those lines that you can talk to. Maybe, and Paulina, maybe you want to say more about that leadership piece, about what we're looking for there, would be really important to mention.
I think when we talk about white supremacist structures, I mean, we haven't shied away from using that word. A lot of times, we think about equity, and we have the word equity in our slides, but we know that, and that in terms of the way that our financial systems have been set up, it really is one that has been based on a system of white supremacy. And so really dismantling those systems is about focusing funding and focusing resources where they have been excluded and extracted. And so when we think about leadership, right, and how your leadership is focused on BIPOC communities, how are you thinking about the ways in which, not only thinking about, but how are you acting to really dismantle those systems, or to work on closing those structural racism barriers, or knocking down those structural racism barriers, right? And we'd like to see that work, throughout the organization, and commitment throughout the organization, up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you, Paulina. When will this recording be ready to email to people?
That's a good question. Maybe one I can't answer. Brian or Adrian?
I can help answer. This is Adrian. That's a little bit up to the Zoom technology heavens, as they have to buffer recordings before we can take a look at them. But we would like it up as soon as possible. We will make sure it gets to attendees, and then also hopefully email it around to people that were unable to attend.
So I know, thank you, Adrian. Patty, I know we're getting close to 11:30, or we're at almost 11:30.
One last question.
Okay, great.
Last one. If we have a CDFI line of business within our organization, can we lend to our real estate development LOB for pre-development?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. Yeah, perhaps if you could just email that to us, we might be able to help. So crc@calvaryinvest.org. But again, these are things that our TA provider is going to be helping with.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, with that, I encourage folks to reach out to our email, crc@calreinvest.org, with any follow-up questions. And I want to turn it over to Clarence to close us with some final words.
Thanks, Paulina. I know this may not seem as if it's enough time to answer all the questions. I think we build in the ability to get to those questions through our TA providers. One thing that popped out at me was this issue in terms of leadership. I think in terms of the questions from organizations that talk about a lack of lending experience or whatever, that is indicative of the lack of capacity and resources we have within a community. And as much as we want to talk about putting capital and resources into the community, one of the most important aspects of this program, and the reason why it's a BIPOC program, is we want to build the financial capacity within BIPOC communities. And to do that, we have to start with a recognition that there is a tremendous lack of that expertise that we want to build and we need to catch up with. The other thing is in terms of the second round of financing, one of the things that we look at closely in terms of this program, we're very pleased that we've been successful in raising these funds. However, I would like for everyone to recognize our ability to continue this, the ability to be able to raise additional funds will be a function of our success, to be a function of our ability to take these resources and to implement them in a positive and constructive way. And I would hope that we don't look at these funds as just a replacement of a lack of financing that we may have in our organizations, but that we are truly committed to building financial capacity out there in the community. So with that, I wish everyone good luck. And again, congratulate Paulina for the hard work and leadership she's provided in terms of this Resilience Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. And I can't leave without thanking John for all his hard work in fundraising. And again, our bank partners and all of the CRC staff for the hard work that they do every day to make these programs a reality. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Good luck. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the email crc@calreinvest.org. Have a good day and stay safe.
Mm-hmm.